Now, here is something that might surprise you. The heart, the one in your chest, is powerful enough to push blood through your arteries and into your legs without much trouble. Getting blood down there is not the problem. Getting it back up is. And that return trip does not rely primarily on your heart at all. It relies on your calf muscles doing their job as a pump, squeezing rhythmically, pushing blood upward through those one-way valves, step after step after step. When you are young and your calves are strong and your vein walls are firm and your valves snap shut the way they were designed to, this system works beautifully. You barely think about it. You walk, you run, you stand, you sit, and the blood keeps moving. But somewhere around 60, sometimes earlier, sometimes later, the system starts to falter. The valves do not close completely. The vein walls stretch. The calf muscle loses mass and force. And suddenly, the pump that was quietly doing its job for decades starts to struggle. Think about it like a water pump in an old house. When it is new, it moves water effortlessly. But over the years, the seals wear out, the motor loses power, and the water starts to flow slower and slower. You do not notice it at first because the change is gradual, but one day you turn on the tap and the pressure is barely a trickle, and you wonder when it got so bad. Your calf pump works the same way. The decline is slow, steady, and almost invisible until it reaches a tipping point where the symptoms become impossible to ignore. Let me tell you about someone. I'm going to call her Eleanor, and she is really a blend of several patients I have cared for over the years, so no one's privacy is on the line. Eleanor was 71, sharp as a tack, still driving, still hosting her grandkids on Sundays, but her feet were cold every single night, even in the middle of summer, and her ankles turned to bread dough by dinner time. She had been faithfully walking a mile a day for years, and she was quietly heartbroken that it was not helping. She sat in my office one afternoon, pulled off her compression socks, and showed me the indentations left around her ankles by the elastic. She looked at me and said, "I am doing everything you told me to do. Why am I still like this?" That question stayed with me. Because she was right. She was doing everything the standard advice tells you to do. Walk, elevate, wear compression, drink water, and none of it was getting to the root of the problem, because none of it was specifically targeting the calf pump. Walking engages the calf pump, yes, but only mildly, only for a split second with each step, and only if the muscle still has enough power to generate a real squeeze. For someone whose calf pump has already weakened, walking is like trying to start a car with a nearly dead battery. The engine turns over a few times, sputters, and never quite catches. You need something more direct, something that forces the pump to engage fully and hold that engagement long enough to actually move the blood that has been sitting stagnant in your lower legs. That is exactly what the 5 movements do. And I am going to walk you through each one of them in order, counting down from 5 to 1. Each one does something the one before it could not. They build on each other. They wake the system up, strengthen the muscles that drive the pump, train your balance so you do not fall, and finally, with number 1, they deliver the single most powerful squeeze your calf pump can produce, the kind that physically clears out pooled blood and drives it back toward your heart. Keep Eleanor in the back of your mind as we go through these, because what finally changed for her is the entire point of everything I am about to show you. Now, before we start the countdown, one quick thing. Everything I am about to show you is one piece of a much bigger picture. The small daily habits that quietly decide whether you are still walking strong at 80 or reaching for a cane at 70. I took everything I tell my own patients about staying mobile and independent in these years, and I put it into one simple plan. It has already helped thousands of people live their best life after 60. If you want it, the link is right there on your screen. You do not need to write anything down, and I will never make you sit through me reading a web address out loud. Now, let me ask you something before we begin. When was the last time you consciously thought about your calf muscles? Not your thighs, not your back, not your shoulders, your calves. The muscles sitting right there on the back of your lower legs, doing their quiet, invisible work every single day of your life. If you are like most people, the answer is never. You have never once thought about them, And yet, they might be the single most important muscles in your entire body when it comes to staying independent, staying mobile, and staying out of a wheelchair after 60, because they are not just muscles, they are a pump. And that pump is your second heart. And right now, if you are over 60 and you spend a good portion of your day sitting, that pump is probably running at a fraction of its capacity. The blood in your lower legs is moving slower than it should. The valves in your veins are leaking. And every hour you spend in a chair, that pump switches off entirely and the blood simply pools. But what if I told you there is a way to switch that pump back on without standing up, without walking, without doing anything that might put strain on your joints or your balance? A movement so simple that surgeons prescribe it to patients before they are even allowed to get out of bed? Let us start the countdown at number 5. Movement number 5, ankle pumps. Now, this one looks almost too simple to be worth your time, and that is exactly why people wave it off and skip it. It is often the very first movement patients are given after leg surgery, before they are even allowed to stand up, precisely because it keeps the blood from pooling while they heal. The reason it works is straightforward. When you flex your foot up and then point it down, your calf contracts and relaxes, and that motion squeezes the veins and moves the blood that has been sitting stagnant around your ankles. A 2025 review in the Journal of Orthopedic Surgery and Research gathered up 16 separate randomized trials and found that simple ankle pumping improved blood flow back up the leg and brought down lower leg swelling in older adults, with no standing and no walking required at all. The whole key is to do it slowly with control and to do it often. To do it right, sit in a chair with your feet flat on the floor. Lift your toes up toward your shins while you keep your heels planted down. Then reverse it. Press your toes down into the floor and lift your heels up the way you would ease onto a gas pedal. Slow and deliberate. That is one repetition. Aim for 20 to 30 of them, 2 or 3 times a day. You can do this while you watch television, while you read, while you sit at the kitchen table waiting for the kettle. It costs you nothing but a few minutes. Think about how much time you spend sitting in the car, at meals, in your chair in the evening. All of that is time. Your pump is switched off and blood is settling in your feet. Ankle pumps switch it back on without you even getting up. Walking runs on momentum. You fall forward and catch yourself over and over. And honestly, your calves barely get a full squeeze out of it. Ankle pumps make the muscle genuinely contract and push. That means warmer feet, less swelling, and less pressure on those fragile veins. It is also one of the safest possible ways to begin if pain or poor balance or plain fatigue keeps you from being on your feet very long. But ankle pumps only wake the system up. They get the blood moving again in the lower leg, and that alone can make a noticeable difference in how your feet feel within days. But they do not address the bigger problem higher up. The veins in your thighs are much larger than the ones in your lower legs, and they carry a far greater volume of blood. If the muscles around them are weak, blood moves slowly through those upper leg veins too, and that sluggish flow contributes to the overall feeling of heaviness, aching, and fatigue that so many people accept as a normal part of aging. It is not normal. It is a symptom of a pump system that is underperforming, and the next movement goes straight after those bigger muscles. Movement number 4, the seated leg lift. And if you are thinking that sitting down must make this an easy one, your legs are going to tell you a very different story about 10 seconds in. When you straighten your leg out in front of you and hold it there, you fire the big muscles across the front of your thigh and the muscles at the front of your hip. Those are the exact muscles you rely on to stand up out of a chair, to climb a flight of stairs, to catch yourself when you start to go down. And when they contract, they press on the large veins running up through your thigh and help drive blood out of the leg. Regular walking barely challenges those muscles enough to slow the loss that comes with age. This matters more than most people realize. And here is the piece that makes it click. Geriatric doctors track something called gait speed, which is simply how fast you walk. They call it the sixth vital sign, right up there with your pulse and your blood pressure, because how fast you walk turns out to predict your fall risk, your independence, and even how long you are likely to live. When walking slows down, it is often one of the very first signals that the body is quietly losing ground. Strengthening the muscles that carry you is exactly how you defend that ground. So here is how you do it. Sit up tall in a sturdy chair with your back pressed against the seat and both feet flat on the floor. Slowly lift one leg straight out in front of you, keeping the knee as straight as is comfortable for you. Hold it there for 2 seconds, then lower it back down slowly without letting the foot just flop to the floor. That is one repetition. Do 10 to 15 on one leg, then switch to the other side. The detail nearly everyone misses is the back. Keep it firmly against the chair so you cannot cheat by rocking and using momentum. That is what forces the right muscles to actually do the work, and that is where the circulation benefit comes from. As this starts to feel easy, add a little resistance. A light ankle weight or a resistance band looped around your foot. Even 1 or 2 pounds makes a real difference. Muscle responds to gentle, steady load at any age, and older adults very often improve faster than they expect simply because they are starting from further back. This movement builds the strength that keeps you walking, and it moves blood through the upper leg in a way that ankle pumps alone can never reach. But even strong thighs will not protect you if your balance system is not firing the way it should. And that brings us to something that most people completely misunderstand about circulation. They think it is purely a plumbing problem, that if you just get the blood moving, everything will be fine. But circulation and balance are deeply connected, far more than anyone realizes. When your balance is poor, you move less. When you move less, your circulation gets worse. When your circulation gets worse, your muscles get weaker. When your muscles get weaker, your balance gets worse. It is the same downward spiral, but balance is the hidden accelerant that makes it burn faster. And that is exactly where the next movement comes in, because it trains your circulation and your balance at the exact same time, doing something that neither ankle pumps nor seated leg lifts can do on their own. A movement that for many of my patients was the first time they felt genuinely steady on their feet again. Number 3, the supported calf raise. This is the movement that trains your circulation and your balance at the very same time. And balance is the thing that quietly decides whether a person keeps their independence or slowly loses it. The National Institute on Aging is very clear on this point. Keeping your lower body muscles strong is one of the best things you can do to hold on to your mobility as you get older. To keep rising out of chairs, off the couch, up the stairs without needing a hand. And your calves sit right at the center of that. Every time they contract, they squeeze those deep veins and force blood upward against gravity. Weak calves mean blood pools, swelling climbs, and your balance reactions get a little slower. So an ordinary stumble is far more likely to turn into an actual fall. And a fall after 60 is not just a bump or a bruise. It is often the beginning of a cascade that ends with a hip fracture, a hospital stay, a loss of confidence, and a permanent reduction in independence. The statistics are sobering. 1 in 4 adults over 65 falls every year. And once you fall once, your risk of falling again doubles. Fear of falling makes you move less, which makes you weaker, which makes you more likely to fall. Another spiral, spinning faster and faster. Your calves are the front line of defense against that spiral. They are the muscles that fire when you stumble, that push you back to upright, that keep you from crumpling to the ground. And they are the same muscles that pump blood out of your legs. One muscle, 2 critical jobs, and most people never train it deliberately at all. They just walk and hope for the best. Walking is not enough. Walking uses the calves in a very shallow way, a brief contraction with each step that barely engages the full range of the muscle. A calf raise, done properly, engages the entire muscle from bottom to top and holds it under tension long enough to build real strength and generate a real pumping action. To do a supported calf raise, stand behind a sturdy chair or at a kitchen counter and rest your hands on it lightly for balance. Feet about hip width apart, rise up slowly onto the balls of your feet, lifting your heels as high as is comfortable. At the top, pause for 2 or 3 seconds and keep your eyes looking straight ahead rather than down at your feet. Then lower yourself slowly, taking a full 3 seconds to come back down. That slow tempo and that little pause at the top are where the real work happens. It makes your calf muscles and your balance system fire together, which is the precise thing your body has to do when you catch yourself mid-stumble. Start with 10 of them. Build toward 20 or 25 as you get stronger. Over just a few weeks, this one movement improves your ankle stability, your circulation, and how fast you react all at once. And it does all of that without pounding on your knees or your hips. For a lot of the people I have cared for, this is the one that first made them feel genuinely steady on their feet again. There is something that happens when a person who has been quietly unsteady for months suddenly feels solid. The fear starts to loosen its grip. They stand a little taller. They walk a little faster. They start doing things they had stopped doing, not because their circulation changed overnight, but because their confidence came back, and confidence is the bridge between movement and recovery. But standing on 2 feet is the gentle version. The next movement takes one of them away. And that is where things get interesting, because what happens when you take 1 foot off the ground reveals something about your body that almost no one is prepared to hear. It reveals something about your future, about your longevity, about whether you will still be walking independently 5 years from now. And it does it in 10 seconds. 10 seconds and a number that stopped me cold the first time I read it. Before we get to that, let me tell you why the calf raise matters so much specifically for circulation, because this is the bridge between what we have been doing and what comes next. When you rise up onto the balls of your feet, your calf muscle contracts fully. Not the partial contraction of walking, but a complete deliberate squeeze that compresses the deep veins in your lower leg with real force. That compression pushes a significant volume of blood upward through the one-way valves. And when you lower yourself slowly, the muscle relaxes, the veins open up, and fresh blood flows in to replace what was just pushed out. Rise, push, lower, refill. Rise, push, lower, refill. That is the pump working at full capacity, the way it was designed to work when you were younger and everything was still tight and strong. The slow lowering is just as important as the rising, because the eccentric phase, the lowering, is where the muscle builds its greatest strength. Rush through it and you lose half the benefit. And here is something I want you to notice. The calf raise and the ankle pump look similar, but they are doing fundamentally different things. The ankle pump is gentle, rhythmic, and repetitive. It wakes the system up and keeps blood from stagnating. The calf raise is forceful, deliberate, and sustained. It strengthens the muscle that powers the pump and trains the balance system that keeps you upright. Both are necessary. Neither one alone is sufficient. And that is the pattern you will see throughout all 5 of these movements. Each one fills a gap that the others leave open. Each one adds something the previous one could not provide. And as we move closer to number 1, the movements become more demanding, more targeted, and more powerful. But first, there is a test. A 10-second test that researchers use to predict something far more serious than poor circulation. Something that changed the way I think about every single patient who walks through my door. Number 2, the single leg stance hold. Now, before you wave this one off as just balance and nothing to do with your blood, let me give you the number that made me take it completely seriously. Back in 2022, researchers publishing in the British Journal of Sports Medicine followed more than 1,700 adults for several years. They found that the people who could not stand on one leg for just 10 seconds had an 84% higher risk of dying over the years that followed compared with the people who could hold it. 84%. And here is the part that stops me every time. Among adults in their early 70s, fewer than half of them could pass that simple test. A 10-second balance check told those researchers more about the road ahead than almost anything else they measured. You can actually try this one right now, carefully, with a counter or a solid chair right next to you. Stand up tall. Put one hand near something you can grab. Lift 1 foot an inch or 2 off the floor and see whether you can hold it steady for 10 seconds without grabbing on. That is the test. And it also happens to be the exercise. The reason it does so much for your blood flow comes down to time. The instant you stand on one leg, your calf, your ankle, your hip, and your core all have to contract and keep contracting to hold you upright. That sustained squeeze keeps the pump running the entire time, pushing blood up instead of letting it settle back down into your foot. Ordinary walking never asks for that. You are on one foot for a split second and then you are off it again. Standing on one leg forces the pump to stay switched on, and this is the spot where circulation and fall prevention completely overlap. When balance fades, people move less. When movement drops, blood flow slows, swelling rises, the feet ache more, confidence drains away, and that is the very spiral we talked about at the start. But when you train balance deliberately, you are not just preventing falls. You are keeping the entire system alive, keeping the blood moving, keeping the muscles engaged, keeping the nerves sharp and responsive. One exercise, multiple layers of protection, all of them critical for anyone over 60 who wants to stay on their own 2 feet. To train it, stand next to a counter or a wall with one hand resting lightly on it for safety. Shift your weight onto one leg and lift the other foot just an inch off the floor. You do not need to lift it high at all. Stand tall, eyes forward, and do not curl your toes to grip the ground. Hold for 20 to 30 seconds, breathing normally the whole time. Then switch legs. That is one set. Start with 2 rounds on each side. As it gets easier, rest your hand on the counter more and more lightly until eventually you can hover it just above the surface without actually touching. The longer, steadier squeeze keeps blood moving and retrains your nerves to react faster when you trip. And that retraining is something that happens at a neurological level, not just a muscular one. Your proprioception, your body's sense of where it is in space, diminishes with age. The nerve signals from your feet to your brain slow down. The brain takes a fraction of a second longer to process the information and send back a correction. That fraction of a second is the difference between catching yourself and hitting the ground. Single leg stance training speeds those signals back up. It forces your nervous system to practice the exact corrections it needs to make when you stumble over and over until they become automatic again. I want you to think about Eleanor for a moment because this is where her story takes a turn. She had been doing ankle pumps and seated leg lifts for about a week when I added the calf raises and the single leg holds. And the first time she tried standing on one leg, she grabbed the counter with both hands and her whole body swayed like a tree in the wind. She could not hold it for more than 4 seconds. 4 seconds. A woman who had been walking a mile a day for years could not stand on one leg for 4 seconds. That is how disconnected walking is from true balance and true circulation. Walking had given her endurance but not stability. It had given her a routine but not resilience. And it had left the single most important pump in her body running at a fraction of its capacity. But balance on its own keeps you upright without fully restoring the flow. For that, you need the single strongest version of the calf pump there is, and that is number 1. The movement I promised you all the way back at the start, the one that vascular rehabilitation programs across the entire world use almost the way they would use a prescription. It looks simple. It looks like something you might already think you are doing. But there is one small difference, one tiny modification that turns it from an ordinary exercise into the most powerful blood-moving movement your legs can produce. And that difference is the hold. That sustained squeeze at the top is what separates a gentle contraction from a therapeutic pump that physically clears pooled blood out of your lower legs and drives it upward toward your heart. Without the hold, you are just exercising. With the hold, you are treating the problem directly. And the research behind it is some of the most compelling I have ever seen in vascular medicine. Number 1, the standing calf pump hold. This is the movement I promised you all the way back at the start. And once you understand what it is doing inside your leg, you will see exactly why vascular rehab programs across the entire world use it almost the way they would use a prescription. It looks a lot like the calf raise from number 3, with one small difference that changes everything. The hold, you rise up onto the balls of your feet and then you stay right there. Your calves work like pressure pumps, and holding at the top keeps that pump fully squeezed long enough to actually clear out the blood that has been stalling around your ankles. and drive it up towards your heart. Ankle pumps wake the system up. The single leg hold trains your control. This movement moves the blood of all and it keeps it moving. And the evidence behind it is real, not hand waving. In a randomized trial published in the Journal of Vascular Surgery, people with genuinely poor leg circulation who did a simple program built around calf raise exercise were able to walk significantly farther before the pain set in. Their pain-free walking distance improved by dozens of meters, and their total walking distance by close to 100, with no medication and no machine involved anywhere. That is the calf pump doing the job it was built to do. Here is how you do it safely. Stand behind a chair or at a counter, hands resting there for your balance, feet about hip width apart. Rise up slowly onto the balls of your feet, heels lifting as high as is comfortable. Now hold it. 3 to 5 seconds at the very top. Breathing normally, eyes forward. Then lower yourself back down slowly, about 3 seconds to come all the way down. That is one repetition. Start with 8 to 10 of them. Work up over time to 15 or 20. Always with control, never rushing. The hold is the entire point. That sustained squeeze keeps the pump fully engaged, drives the blood up, brings the swelling down, and strengthens the exact muscles your body reaches for when you catch yourself. And because there is no jumping and no pounding anywhere in it, it is gentle enough for most people with arthritis or shaky balance as long as you keep one hand on that counter. I want you to understand something about that hold because it is not just about strength. It is about time under tension. When you hold the calf contraction for 3 to 5 seconds, you are giving the venous system enough time to actually respond. The veins need a sustained squeeze to push blood through the valves, not just a quick flick. A quick contraction moves a little blood. A sustained contraction moves a lot of blood. That is the difference between a tap on the shoulder and a firm push. The hold is the push. So let me tell you what changed for Eleanor because this is where all of it landed for her. I had her stop obsessing over her step count and instead do these 5 movements in order for about 12 minutes a day. Ankle pumps in her chair, first thing in the morning, seated leg lifts, the supported calf raises at the kitchen counter while her coffee brewed, the balance holds, and the standing calf pump holds at the very end. Now, I am going to be honest with you about her result because I always am. Her circulation did not turn into a 30-year-old's overnight, and I would never promise you that. But within a few weeks, her ankles were not ballooning up by dinner anymore. Her feet were warmer at night, and the thing she told me she cared about the most, she stopped feeling like she might tip over when she got up off the couch. She felt steady again. For a woman who had been quietly terrified of falling, that was everything. Before I send you off, I owe you one honest caution because I would much rather you be safe than sorry. If you ever get sudden, severe pain in one leg, or a leg turns pale and cold and numb out of nowhere, or you have a sore on your foot or ankle that simply will not heal, please do not sit at home doing exercises. That is the kind of thing you get looked at quickly because it can mean an artery is seriously blocked, and that is an emergency. Everything I have shown you today is meant for the slow, chronic, everyday poor circulation, not for a sudden crisis like that. So there they are, 5 movements that wake up your second heart and get the blood moving back up out of your legs. Let me give you a fast recap. Number 5, ankle pumps to wake the pump up. Number 4, seated leg lifts to move blood up through the thighs. Number 3, supported calf raises for circulation and balance together. Number 2, the single leg hold for that long, steady squeeze and the balance that keeps you upright. And number 1, the standing calf pump hold. The most powerful of them all, the one I would pick without hesitation if you made me choose only one. Keep walking. Walking is wonderful, and I never want you to stop doing it, but walking alone leaves a real gap, and these 5 movements are what fill it. They take less than 15 minutes a day. They cost you nothing at all, and you can do every one of them at home in front of the television. Your circulation is one of the very few things about getting older where you actually get a real vote. This is how you cast it. If this helped you today, the link to the complete plan I put together for my own patients is right there on your screen. Everything I have shared in this video, plus the daily habits that keep you walking strong at 80 instead of reaching for a cane at 70, is in one simple plan that has already helped thousands of people. You do not need to write anything down. Just tap the link and it is yours. Take good care of those legs of yours because they are carrying you through the rest of your life and they deserve a few minutes of your attention every single day.